This video is a compilation of all the videos I've done on the short forms of oral literature. So in this video, you'll find the proverbs, you'll find the tongue twisters, you'll find the puns and jokes, and also you're going to find the riddles. If you're looking for the individual videos, then you can check the link in the description that is going to lead you to the playlist. Enjoy. Life is a mysterious thing. It is a phenomenon, and every human being endeavors to try and live the best life possible. Every society, therefore, tries to guide its members in a way that can make them live the best life possible. They try to do this using pieces of advice and even warnings. These can be carried in short statements that can be handed down through generations. We call these statements proverbs. A proverb can therefore be defined as a short statement that carries a lot of wisdom that is handed down through generations. These proverbs can be used to advise, to warn, to encourage, and even to just state a fundamental truth about life. Proverbs have some characteristics. Let's look at some of them. The most obvious characteristic of proverbs is that they are short and brief. When you say a proverb such as, "A watched pot never boils," very short, "A watched pot never boils," you're done. This shortness and brevity helps in memorability so that it is easier to carry through generations. When you're told a long story, sometimes the details can be blurred, but a proverb, because it is very short, you can always remember it. It is very easy for even children to remember it. So a proverb, first and foremost, is short. A proverb also is rich in meaning. So when you say "a watched pot never boils," there is that kind of surface meaning, but then you have a deeper meaning. There's inference that is made about life. So it uses figures of speech also as a characteristic. So the richness in meaning is also brought out by the third characteristic, which is figures of speech. So you will find in Proverbs things like metaphors and similes. So Proverbs are short, they're rich in meaning, and they also have these metaphors, similes, figures of speech that give them this kind of richness. The fourth characteristic of Proverbs is that they have some two parts. They can be divided into two parts. The first part is called the proposition, and the second part is the completion. It's almost like the proposition gives us an idea, then the completion completes the idea. When you say "a watched pot," you're asking, a watched pot, what happens to a watched pot? Then you say "never boils." So Proverbs can be divided into two distinct parts: the proposition, the first part, and the completion. Most of the time, the proposition and the completion are divided by a comma, so it's sometimes very easy to know them. But when there is no comma, just look at the idea that is being proposed and then being completed. Proverbs also have this characteristic of carrying the philosophy of the community. In short, through a community's proverbs, we can tell what they stand for. If you're being told, "Hurry, hurry has no blessings," it means that this community actually values patience. So from a proverb, you can pick these kind of ideas that the community stands for. Another characteristic of proverbs is that they're used in specific use cases, meaning that a proverb is very specific in the situations when they are going to be used. If someone did something in a hurry and now they are suffering the consequences of being hasty, then you can be told, "Hurry, hurry has no blessing." You can also tell someone this before they do that thing that you think is going to make them suffer. Also, when someone needs encouragement, they're going through a very tough situation, and you're trying to tell them that this is going to end and the end is going to be okay, then in this case, you can tell them that every cloud has a silver lining, telling them that just hang in there, it's going to be all right. So every proverb has a very specific use case. Let us now look at the stylistic devices that are used in Proverbs. The first stylistic device is alliteration. And as we've seen before, alliteration is the repetition of the initial consonant sounds in words that are close in a line. In this case, a line or a sentence in a proverb. A proverb such as, "He who laughs last laughs longest." Then you have the repetition of this la 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 la. L in laughs L in last and L in longest. This is actually alliteration because the initial consonant sound is repeated in words that are close. Another stylistic device that we find in Proverbs is what we call parallelism. In parallelism, you see that the different parts of the proverb, the proposition and the completion, are almost the same length, and they tend to carry the same weight somewhat. So they are parallel in some way. In the proverb, Hasira, Hasara, you find that the first part is Hasira, then the next one is Hasara. The same kind of weight on both sides. Proverbs also have this very unconventional form of rhyme where a word somewhere in the middle of the line is going to rhyme with a word at the end of the line, especially the Swahili proverbs. An example, asiyekuwapo na lake halipo, meaning that the kuwapo part and the alipo part, they actually rhyme because of the popo. We also have assonance in Proverbs. Assonance is the occurrence of the same vowel sounds in words that are close to each other in a line. So in a proverb such as haraka haraka haina baraka, which is Swahili, that just means that hurry hurry has no blessings. So haraka haraka haina baraka, you find that there's the everywhere. Haraka haraka haina baraka, you find the a's there. That is assonance. Assonance, alliteration, and even this rhyme that we've seen, all of these, they actually make these proverbs memorable and easy to remember so that they can be carried and handed down through generations. Proverbs can also carry allusion, and allusion is just a way of talking about things that you believe that the audience already have an idea of. An example of the proverb such as ukistaajabu ya Musa utaona ya Firauni. It simply means that Musa is Moses and Firauni is Pharaoh, the Pharaoh, and it simply means that the audience should be already aware of the story in the Bible of Moses and the way he liberated the Israelites from the Egyptian bondage. And so there's so many things that you might want the audience to have known before you do a proverb. So in this case, we have allusion that refers to something that the audience is supposed to be aware of already. Proverbs can also have stylistic devices such as paradox, such as hyperbole, and even personification. So as a student, I wanted to find out examples of these cases in Proverbs. As I have illustrated through these examples of Proverbs and their characteristics and even stylistic devices, one of the most important ways or the most effective ways of passing or handing down wisdom is to just tell people something that is interesting, something that is short, something that is memorable, and then they'll do the rest. They'll tell it to their children, and the children will tell it to their children, and this wisdom is going to go on and on and on and on through generations. Let us also not forget that because our realities keep changing, some proverbs need to be added to refer to things that are in our environment so that they are more relevant in some way. So Proverbs, one of the most important genres of oral literature.
So he had me say 3,333 and 1/3 with the TH and not with the S.
9 nice night nurses dressing nicely. 9 nice night nurses dressing nicely.
Where she sits, she shines. Where she shines, she sits. Where she sits, she shines. Where she shines, she sits.
Peter Pepper picked a peck of pepper, a peck of picked a peck of pepper, Peter Pepper picked. If Peter Pepper picked a peck of pepper, where's the peck of pepper Peter Pepper picked?
Let's talk about tongue twisters. A tongue twister is a pronunciation word game that uses words with similar sounds, which are normally confusing or difficult to pronounce. These sounds can be deemed problematic depending on the way they've been arranged in these words or in sentences. In the performance of tongue twisters, one person says the tongue twister and then another person repeats at high speed.
Okay, let me try another one. A Kiswahili one. Ni kipi kikusikitishacho?
Ni kipi Kukipitacho.
Again.
Ni kipi kukisitacho?
The fun is then felt when someone attempts to do this tongue twister at high speed, and we are always hoping that when they're trying to do that, they're going to mess up. So when they mess up, the audience is supposed to, of course, burst out in laughter.
Kan ha here and ha and e. Kan ha here and kan ha here and kan ha here and ha and e.
The tongue twister, therefore, is a fun way of teaching pronunciation and enhancing socialization. Let's look at the features of tongue twisters. The first feature of tongue twisters is repetition. Repetition simply means that a word occurs more than once. Because tongue twisters are interested in sounds, sometimes these sounds that are supposed to be learned are in certain words. Therefore, these words can be repeated so that the person saying the tongue twister has to meet these sounds very many times. For example, in the tongue twister, red lorry, yellow lorry, red lorry, yellow lorry, red lorry, yellow lorry. The word lorry is repeated, and therefore there is repetition. Tongue twisters are big on sound, and therefore they have to make use of sound patterns. The first sound pattern is alliteration, and this is the repetition of the initial consonant sounds in words. Take a look at this Kikuyu tongue twister that makes use of the sound k at the beginning of some words.
Kanaka ni kora, kona kora kora, na kokora kona kanaka ni kora kora. Kanaka ni kora, kona kora kora, na kokora kona kanaka ni kora kora.
The tongue twister, she sells seashells at the seashore, also has that sh, which is alliteration. Some tongue twisters also make use of consonants. Consonance is the occurrence of the same consonant sound in different words in any other place apart from the initial position in words. Therefore, in she sells seashells at the seashore, there is repetition of the la there, that is consonants. Because of this emphasis on sounds, tongue twisters are only effective in their original language. This is because when you translate a tongue twister from its original language, these sound patterns are lost. Apart from repetition, the sound patterns are going to be lost. Because if you translate two different words that ended in the same sound in the original language, if you translated them into a new language, you will most likely not end up with words that end in the same sound. Therefore, the original effect of consonants is going to be lost. So tongue twisters are very sensitive. They are best enjoyed in the original language. Let us now look at the functions of tongue twisters. The first function of tongue twisters is to offer entertainment. The beauty of tongue twisters is when people try and they try to mess up and people laugh. That laughter, of course, makes us pass time and feel good. So entertainment is at the heart of tongue twisters.
Peter Pepper picked a peck of little pepper, a peck of little pig, a peck of little pepper, Peter Pepper picked. If Peter Pepper picked a peck of little pepper, was a peck of little pepper, Peter Pepper picked. Peter Pepper picked a peck of little pepper.
Tongue twisters are also used by young people to pass time, so it is very important as a recreational tool. Tongue twisters are effective when there's an audience listening. Therefore, they are used for socialization. If you did a tongue twister and no one was there to hear you mess up, then there would be no fun in it. So socialization is part of the functions of a tongue twister.
Kantai za Masai boy, if kantai atai, why kantai atai like kantai atai. Kantai za Masai boy, if kantai atai, why kantai atai like kantai atai. Kantai za Masai boy, if kantai atai, why kantai atai like kantai atai. Kantai za Masai boy, if kantai atai, why kantai atai like kantai atai.
Tongue twisters are very important in early language training in children.
Hello, tell me your name.
Kayla.
Kayla who?
Yabero.
I have a tongue twister for you. Can you try it?
Yes.
She sells seashells at the seashore.
Okay. She sells shells at the seashore.
Faster.
She sells seashells at the seashore.
Faster.
She sells seashells at the seashore.
Tongue twisters also enhance creativity in children When you've told a child a tongue twister and they've enjoyed it, they're going to be tempted to form their own because they want to test their friends. They want to have more fun. And in this way, their creativity is enhanced. One of the most important uses of tongue twisters is for correcting speech defects. Speech defects such as stammering or just an inability to pronounce certain sounds can be helped using tongue twisters. Related to this is when someone is trying to acquire a new language. Sometimes the sounds in the new language will be problematic to you, and because of this, tongue twisters can be used to help. A classic example is Arnold Schwarzenegger. When he was trying to break into Hollywood, he had a problem with his thick accent, and therefore he was assigned a speech coach who tried to help him using tongue twisters. Take a look at this clip where he explains how this process worked.
I remember that when he says, you always say three. It's not three, it is three with TH. So he had me say 3,333 and 1/3 with the TH and not with the S.
Very good.
Yeah, but I mean, it's after 5,000 years, right? After doing thousands of reps on it, and I remember we get confused with the F's and the V and the W. That we would say, this is a nice vine, but it's actually wine, right? So the guy had me say, a fine wine grows on a vine. So now I ran around with that. Then for instance, he said to me, Arnold, you have to also learn how to say the vibrating Z. We don't have that in German. So he said, the sink is made out of zinc. So I was saying that. So things like that, I was saying things over and over
Useful
again.
phrases.
Tongue twisters are so much fun. They remind us of the beauty of a language. They tell us that at the heart of the language, we have sounds. And when each sound is treated with the respect it deserves, communication happens.
9 nice night nurses dressing nicely. 9 nice night nurses dressing nicely.
The first few years of a child's life are very critical. This is where they get introduced to the world, they get introduced to the society's culture, and they learn about their environments. In the traditional African societies, we knew this, and that is why during this period, we tried to introduce children to their environments through very many creative ways. One of these ways was through the use of riddles. In this video, we're going to talk about riddles. We'll talk about what riddles are, their characteristics, the stages in a riddling process, and also we're going to look at the purposes or the functions of riddles. A riddle can be thought of as a puzzle, something to be deciphered. So it can be in form of a statement, it can be in form of a narrative, a very short narrative that tells us about a scenario. It can also be in terms of an object that's supposed to be unraveled. Therefore, a riddle needs to be deciphered or to be unraveled or to be solved. A riddle also has two sets of participants. The first person is called the challenger, the person who poses the riddle, and then the other group is known as the respondent or respondents. A riddle also has some openings to signify to the audience that the riddle is now starting, and this one varies from community to community. Like in Kiswahili, they are going to say kitendawili. That is their hint that tells us that the riddling session is beginning. Let us now look at the features of riddles. First is the performance aspect. A riddle deals in the interaction between the challenger and the respondent. So they're going to say something like riddle, riddle. The respondents are going to respond like riddle come. That performative aspect is a very important feature in riddles. Riddles are also relatively brief. One of the reasons this is the case is that when you're trying to give someone a scenario to solve, if it is very long, then it is going to be too complicated and they're going to forget the little aspects of it. So the shorter the riddle, the more effective it is. Riddles also show repetition. This repetition is supposed to be used so that aspects of the riddle are emphasized, so that these kind of images are brought to life. So repetition is a very important feature of riddles. Riddles also make use of ideophones. And we said that ideophones are words that imitate sounds. They are words that are made up. They are not part of the vocabulary of the language, but they are made up so that they can imitate sounds. This is very important because the image, the sound image, is really enhanced. Riddles also have this feature of metaphors, and a metaphor is where we compare two different objects directly, so without the use of as or like. And so one thing stands for the other in some way. You can say someone is a lion, or a lion came here. So a lion doesn't have to be really the real lion, but it can stand for something else. So metaphors are very important, very prevalent in riddles. These images are very important because they make the audience to think, to make connections between different things. Some riddles have the sound device of alliteration, and alliteration is where we have the initial consonant sound repeated in words that are close. So this is very important because one, it makes the riddle interesting but also memorable in some way. Riddles also make use of personification, and personification is where we give inanimate objects the qualities of human beings. So look at these riddles from The Hobbit and see the personification in them. You can attempt to solve them. At the end of this video, I'm going to give you the solution to them. So those are some of the features of riddles. Let us now look at the steps in a riddling session. A riddling session has steps that it follows, and these steps are given names. Picture a situation in the African village where we don't have TVs or Netflix or anything. It's in the evening, people want to tell stories, but before we tell these stories, someone tells us a riddle. How does this person begin the riddle? The first step in a riddling session is called the challenge. This is where the challenger tells the audience that, hey, I want to give you a riddle. So a challenger can say something like, riddle, riddle. That one is the first step that we call the challenge. After saying that, the audience, of course, will accept the challenge, and they will say something like, riddle come. That is the second step of the riddling session. The first step is the challenge. The second step is the acceptance. The audience is saying that, hey, bring it on, we're ready. After that, the challenger gives the riddle itself. The challenger poses the riddle. So the third step is the riddle. The challenger can say something like, my house has no door. That is the riddle, the third step. The next step is going to be done by the respondents, the audience. After being given the riddle, they're going to attempt to solve the riddle. So we're going to say attempts. That is the fourth step, the attempt. Someone can say, hey, that is a stone. The other person can say, oh, that is a river, or whatever they come up with. Those are the attempts. A good riddle should not be solved at this point, because the beauty of the riddling session is the attempts and the failure to solve the situation. So the respondents will try, and if they fail, which they should do if the riddle is good, then the challenger is going to tell them that if you want me to give you the solution, I want a present or a prize. So the fifth step in the riddling session is the prize. The prize is something hypothetical. The audience can tell the challenger that, hey, we give you a town, such a beautiful town, or we give you this forest, or we give you this piece of land. If the challenger is impressed, then they're going to give the solution. So the last step in the riddling session is the solution. Let us go through the steps again. The first step is the challenge. The second step is the acceptance. The third is the riddle itself. The fourth is the attempt. The fifth is the prize that is given to the challenger. And the sixth is the solution. Let us now talk about the functions of riddles. Riddles play a very important role in the society. First, riddles enhance creativity. The children were not just supposed to regurgitate riddles that they had heard. They're supposed to also use those kind of elements to form their own riddles. That way, they become creative. Riddles are also a form of entertainment. As I said, think about life without Netflix. So this is where we get our entertainment from. The third function is that riddles sharpen our imagination. When someone tells you about my house has no door, or my sister cooks better than your mother, then you're starting to think, oh, who could this sister be? Or then you realize that maybe it could be a bee that makes honey. So these kind of things enhance our creativity. And when a child is brought up in a creative environment, then they can be good at solving problems. Riddles also enhance our confidence and improve our oratory skills. Confidence in the sense that for you to stand up and say, I have a riddle, you need to actually master a lot of confidence and you need to sharpen it. So that is one thing that riddles did. Also to improve our oratory skills. When you talk and you create stories and scenarios, then you become a better orator. Riddles also perform a very important function. This is oral literature, and the aspect of community in the traditional African society is really emphasized. So when children come together for a riddling session, there are bonds that are formed. It is a social kind of environment. So riddles also are used for socialization. As we've seen, riddles are very important. They create an avenue for creativity, for entertainment, and many other functions. Now take a look at the solutions to the riddles that I had posed earlier.
Ice cream, you scream, you all scream for ice cream. Ice cream, you scream, you all scream for ice cream. Ice cream, you scream, you all scream for ice cream.
We have come to the end of our discussion of oral literature genres. And in this video, we look at the last two genres, jokes and puns. A joke is a funny statement, situation, or story that is designed to make people laugh. A joke, for it to be effective, has to have two parts. The first part of a joke is called the setup. This is where the audience is introduced to the context of the story or situation. This is done in order to prepare the audience for the ambiguity or the unforeseen circumstance that is going to be given at the end. In short, the setup prepares us for the second part of the joke. The second part is called the punchline. The punchline is a part of the joke that ties everything together and now brings the ambiguity or brings the situation that they didn't expect, where we now draw the humor from. Most jokes are short. Some of them are actually just two sentences. So in a situation where we have a joke that is made up of two sentences, the first sentence is always the setup and the second sentence is the punchline. For example, a joke that says something like this: what did the spider do on the internet? He made a website. Those are two sentences. The first part that talks about what did the spider do on the internet introduces us to the spider and the internet, paints a picture. Then the second part that says that he built a website now ties the website to the web of the spider and also ties it to the internet, makes it funny. So the first part is the setup and the second part is the punchline.
Mchongo wa no jokes. For example, uko na kichwa kubwa hadi ukiingia daro, mwalimu anasema no group work.
Jokes can be seen to have two features. Number one, they're supposed to be humorous, that is the feature. And number two, there's some ambiguity that is introduced. This ambiguity is what makes these jokes funny because it makes us tie things together.
So Charles' truck got stolen in Kisumu, and one of the thieves is overheard bragging about the carjacking, saying, Omera ni cyber truck. You know what I mean? Ni cyber truck.
Let us now look at the functions of jokes. Traditionally, and in the present times, jokes are used for entertainment. So jokes are supposed to offer us a period where we forget about everything in the world and we just have some time that we enjoy ourselves. So the first function of jokes is to provide entertainment. Because jokes are supposed to be told to an audience, jokes also give us a tool for socialization. It brings people together to enjoy themselves. So it's one thing that brings us together and fosters socialization. Jokes can also be used to provide comic relief where there is a lot of tension. Maybe it is a play or a song, and then someone throws in a joke there. We can release the tension that we had and we can laugh. So it can be used to provide comic relief. Jokes also create an avenue where young people can be creative, because as we tell jokes and we make others laugh, we become more creative. We look at the environment around us and we try to draw from it to create contexts and to create new jokes as we go on with our lives. These jokes can also be precursors to longer forms of oral literature. An example, in the Luo community, we have a situation where when we had these nyatiti songs, before the song actually begins, before the singer starts to sing, the song begins with the nyatiti player playing the nyatiti, but also he cracks a joke or two. Like the famous one that is always cracked in most of these songs is where they say that a torn underwear is always removed together with the trouser. When it is said in the mother tongue and all those pictures are painted, then it's very funny. It is used at the beginning of songs to make people laugh and to prepare for something that is magical. Let us now talk about puns. A pun is a humorous and clever wordplay that uses words with the same pronunciations but different meanings. This is done in order to make the audience make the connection between these two different words that are pronounced the same way. And by creating that kind of connection, we find humor in it. For example, someone can just say something like, "Why can't a bicycle stand on its own?" And someone will say, "Oh, it's because it is too tired." Now you see, the too tired part has two different meanings. It can mean that the bicycle has two tires, or it is exhausted. That is why it can't stand on its own. Either way, the two meanings will still make sense, but we find the joke, the humor there, because we are trying to say, oh, a bicycle is too tired, or it is going to be having difficulties in standing on its own. So that kind of thing. Wordplay, where we have different words pronounced the same way, different meanings, but they come together to form this kind of humor. That is what we call a pun. So as features go, puns have two main features, just like jokes. They are humorous, so they're supposed to elicit laughter most of the time, especially when this pun is intended. And number two, puns are supposed to bring some ambiguity because of these different types of meanings. That is why now we try to make the connection between the different words. So ambiguity and humor are two very important features of puns.
I scream, you scream, you all scream for ice cream. I scream, you scream, you all scream for ice cream. I scream, you scream, you all scream for ice cream.
Puns are used for many reasons. So let's look at the uses of puns. Puns, first and foremost, are used for entertainment, because as someone says these sentences, we find humor in them, and then, of course, they make us relax and help us to pass time. So this is a very important usage of puns.
From Swahili community we have Papa aliomba kabla ya kukula papa. Papa the Pope and Papa the fish. Mama aliota mtoto ameota meno. Ota to germinate, ota to dream. And lastly, mkulima alipanga panga baada ya kulima. Panga to arrange and panga the farming tool. From Luo community we have Kiki chiel rech but chiel. Chiel the fence, chiel to fry.
Puns are also used to foster critical and creative thinking, but also we can say that puns make us think quickly. So that when I say, how do you call a singing laptop? And you say, a singing laptop is Adele. So someone listening to this will have to make the connection between Adele, Dell, the brand of laptops or computers, and also Adele, the singer. So this makes you think very quickly and also helps us to be creative.
Wachina wale walitengeneza barabara barabara.
Puns can also be used to create sarcasm. If you want to talk about a situation in a way that is not too obvious, then you can use a pun, and of course someone listening is going to make the connection between what you're saying and the situation at hand. Puns, because they use homophones, also help especially young people to make them aware of homophones in the language. So when a Luo says Chieu chieo chio chege. Chege chung chwako chai. Chai chiek chieng chiro. That one is a tongue twister for ch, but it begins by saying chieu chieo chio chege. That one talks about chieu of waking up and chieu of the porcupine. And now you have the homophones, you know that waking up and the name for the porcupine in the Luo community has the same pronunciation. And as a young person, you get to learn these homophones very early on. So as you've seen, puns and jokes bring some humor into our lives, and therefore they make our lives to be more bearable. And when that happens, we become better adjusted to our environments and we appreciate life more. In the next video, which is going to be the last video of this series, I'm going to tie everything we've discussed on oral literature so that we can call it a day.
Mbuni yule alipita kando ya mbuni.